to give a little bit of very brief context to the role of GP Partners Australia in what you'll see today. GP Partners Australia very much took the view a few years ago that innovation needed to be at the forefront of its DNA as a company and as an organisation, very much to reflect and embody the way in which it nurtures its relationships, its relevance and its value it offers to its GP members and practices. And so today is a reflection of how that is possible. We believe it's a great reflection. And I think you'll also see that while our members are very much front and centre to our value proposition in terms of the market that will be presented to you today, that we're building a framework and a fund to deliver to, the sheer nature of the fact that GPs are at the epicentre, so to speak, of the way in which the primary health network arguably operates and the way in which the whole health architecture operates, you'll see that the beneficiaries from this activity and investment are very much far broader than obviously our membership. So to that extent, we have a few people this afternoon who will talk you through the why and a little bit about the how as to what we're delivering. And so with that, I'd very much like to welcome Ashley Hunter from Deloitte to commence.
Thank you, Roseanne. I must admit, I had to, when I saw this stage, I had to come up here and do a bit of a check just to make sure that my head wasn't going to hit the ceiling here, but I think we're all good. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ash Hunter, and I'm a director in Deloitte's Mergers and Acquisitions Advisory Team, or M&A for short. You'll probably hear that acronym throughout my speech. So on behalf of Deloitte, it's our privilege and pleasure to be hosting you all here tonight for the launch of GP Accelerate. I'm really looking forward to this evening and hearing from Anthony and Rowan and learning more about GP Accelerate for a couple of reasons. First of all, I've had a bit to do with Anthony over the last 10 or 12 years, and I've always known him to be a real innovator, a strategic thinker, and probably most importantly, always entertaining. So looking forward to what you have to say, Anthony. And secondly, the purpose of GP Accelerate really cuts across a couple of passions of mine. Firstly, healthcare, the healthcare industry, and secondly, M&A. So thought it might be worthwhile just sharing a couple of perspectives I have on each of those passions that I think will be relevant to GP Accelerate and also to many of you here tonight. So firstly, on the healthcare sector, many of you hopefully have either read or heard of Deloitte's Make It Adelaide report that we released last year. Effectively, that was a report outlining a blueprint for what we believe will be a more prosperous South Australia. In that report, we identified the health and medical industry as one of 4 key service industries that we believe has the potential to be sort of the future growth engines of our state economy here. And really the reasons for that were twofold. One was based on the competitive advantages that we have here in South Australia in the health industry. And then secondly, more broadly around what the economic or macro themes and the market dynamics in that sector. And that work was completed by our Deloitte Access Economics team. So with the health and biomedical precinct on North Terrace, as I understand it, it's the largest of its kind in the Southern Hemisphere. I think there's a real sense of scale or critical mass, reputation and momentum building around healthcare in our state. I think the challenge now is how do we leverage that in terms of the research undertaken there on North Terrace to really build or establish and build healthcare companies that are going to be the future healthcare businesses in our state. And I think that's going to really require collaboration between researchers, between entrepreneurs, between healthcare providers and the broader business community. And from what I understand of GP Accelerate, I think these are the sorts of collaborations that that GP Accelerate business model seeks to address and foster. Just from an M&A perspective, some of you might be surprised to know that actually if you look at M&A activity over the last 12 months, and when you look at it by total deal value, the healthcare sector is actually ranked number 1 in terms of all industries in Australia. Traditionally, M&A activity in Australia has been dominated by consumer products, by industrials, certainly by energy and resources, but increasingly healthcare is sort of emerging as one of, if not, the most important industry sector from an M&A perspective in our country. And I think the reason for that is, the main reason I believe, is that healthcare is one of the very few sectors in an economy, an Australian economy in that sense, that exhibits both defensive characteristics in the sense that it's generally not a discretionary spend. It's therefore largely immune to economic cycles, but also it has high growth potential. And when you think about, obviously in the Australian context, ageing population, increasing prevalence of chronic diseases, there's a lot of thematics around sort of just natural growth that's going to occur in the healthcare sector in decades to come. And there are very, very few industries across Australia that can sort of match that in terms of being both defensive or low risk, but also high growth potential. It's quite a match, and I think that's really what's driven a lot of investment activity in this sector. That sort of I suppose when investors look at making investments, they're thinking about what's the risk profile and what's the growth potential. And so it's not surprising that we have seen these sorts of stats around M&A in healthcare. It's funny actually, working in an M&A, as an M&A practitioner, we get a lot of private equity firms come and meet with us and want to catch up for coffee and understand sort of what opportunities we might have for them. And it's always a pretty consistent theme that these PE firms, they come in and they say, look, we're industry agnostic, we like to invest, we will invest across any industry pretty much other than maybe property or energy and resources, but we really love healthcare, and do you have anything for us in the healthcare sector? And luckily for us, we've just speaking with Rohan earlier, we've done a lot in healthcare over the last 2 to 3 years, and right now sort of we as we speak, we have 3 locally Adelaide-based healthcare businesses that we're selling. I think though there does appear to be, I'm not sure how to describe it other than maybe say market failures or gaps in the market that I think that can be filled in terms of healthcare or M&A in the healthcare sector in Australia. The first one, and this is not unique to healthcare, but it relates to size. What I've learned doing this for 13 years is that there are far more buyers prepared to pay far higher valuation multiples for a business that makes $5 million of profit compared to a business that makes $500,000 of profit. And I think this creates a real opportunity for investors out there that are prepared to invest in these small to medium-sized healthcare businesses with a view to growing them, helping them reach a scale that would then warrant interest and be attracted to a number of private equity, domestic and international trade buyers. I think the potential returns from that sort of play are really amplified in that not only do you have the earnings growth that brings, but also you have the growth in the valuation multiple, and that importantly can have a much bigger impact on your total returns as an investor. Probably the second thing we've seen in terms of a gap to be filled, I think, is that we're seeing more and more these local healthcare businesses, particularly those that have been underpinned by some form of intellectual property, be acquired by international investors as opposed to domestic investors. And what that says to me is probably one of either two things. Either Australian investors aren't truly valuing the intellectual property that exists in our economy here, and just not getting it, or alternatively, these healthcare businesses that own this intellectual property don't fully appreciate the value of what they have and the ability to export it and realise its full potential. So in summary, if I can leave you with 3 key takeaways. Firstly, the future, I believe, for healthcare businesses in our state is very strong on account of the competitive advantages we have and also the market dynamics around the sector. Secondly, M&A in the healthcare sector is booming. I've never seen it any sort of stronger than this in my 13 years of doing it. And finally, I think there's a real opportunity for investors to buy those small to medium-sized healthcare companies, particularly those that are backed by some form of intellectual property, to leverage that to help grow those businesses help them get to a scale that would open up a much broader set of buyers and investors that are prepared to pay much higher valuation multiples. So with that in mind, I look forward to hearing from Rohan and Anthony and like you learning more about GP Accelerate. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ashley, and they were great insights, and it's good to hear that obviously what comes out of our program in terms of healthcare businesses will obviously, in a sense, increase the contestability in the pipeline, so that's very encouraging. So with that, I'd like to also now invite Rohan Ward from CMIO AllScripts to talk a little bit about his journey and how a program like this might have helped him.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Anthony has made the mistake of allowing me to speak wax lyrical about my history. First time I've actually been able to stand up and tell anyone about the last 20 years of my life, so I'm going to try and keep it brief, but I'm a very interesting fellow. So my story is one that you would describe as relatively typical of a startup in Adelaide and relatively atypical of a doctor. I'm a trained clinician. I graduated from Adelaide Medical School in 1999. Worked my internship program at Queen Elizabeth Hospital. I joined the surgical program and worked in Flinders, the now defunct, soon to not be defunct, Repat Hospital, Queen Elizabeth, Lyell McEwen. Around that time, my story starts to become atypical for a doctor. Now, my internship at Queen Elizabeth was plagued with a terrible black and white keyboard-driven clinical application called Homer, I think it was. And I was sick of getting into work 15 minutes early so I could click Control Shift F7 print screen 8 times to print a list of patients that I could then share with my ward round. So I took an Excel spreadsheet and I put my patients on there. And that was quicker because I could click print 8 copies and that would save me the 10 minutes of printing. Now I have a slight background in IT. My dad is an IT manager and I'm an IT geek. I played the early gaming. But I knew how to write a macro, so I wrote a macro that moved patients around, captured their handover notes. I started talking to the IT department who gave me some HL7 data that I could then import into this Excel spreadsheet. And after about 6 months, I built a tool that was automatically printing my pathology orders. So I was a relatively simple tool. Now, having joined the surgical program, one of the things that was important then, and I presume it's important now, is that you suck up to as many people as possible. So one of my suck-ups was to offer to do a Master of Surgery with the Professor of Surgery at Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And we chose to do that Master of Surgery on proving that an IT system could reduce inappropriate pathology orders, which we did. We saved the department some hundreds of thousands of dollars. During that program, I was working with another hospital group through a program called the Health Roundtable. And in that program, I met Geelong Hospital, who asked me if they could buy the software, which was quite interesting to me. I didn't realise you could sell it. So I busily set about working out what commercialisation was, and at the same time formed a company called Core Medical Solutions with an old colleague from medical school who happened to be an IT geek as well. We moved into one of the cupboards in the medical department at Queen Elizabeth and built a company. Now, at the time, there was really no such thing as a health IT industry, to my mind, in Adelaide. And so we went and sought as much industry advice as we could get. I worked with all the programs, the Comet grants, the R&D Start program, Oz industry programs, industry mentoring. I joined the South Australian Youth Entrepreneur Scheme where I met a number of colleagues that I've worked with over that time. Flirted with Playford Capital for some early venture capital. I came to a number of First Tuesday events here at Deloitte's and met much of the industry. But the industry at that stage was really people that were thinking about selling technology into health rather than health IT as a specific device. Typical to a startup, I went without a salary for 2 years. I remortgaged my house twice. I drew down every dollar that every stupid credit card company would give me over that time. I decided to rebuild the kitchen myself, and I had 2 kids. So not atypical for a startup, certainly interesting bruises to have picked up. I had a run-in with an IP lawyer. I had a number of run-ins with extraordinarily vicious customer lawyers. I spent far too much of my own money on legal advice realising only later that expensive legal advice is only important when you have money to save or spend. We took on some seed capital, and that seed capital turned sour. We sold some shares to a partner that we had to buy out. So we went through the full gamut of starting up a business. 16 years later, we found ourselves across more than 100 hospitals across Australia. We're selling a fully functional electronic medical record product, and somewhat atypically for a startup, I should say, we were able to exit the business. So we were fully acquired by AllScripts in December 2016, and I am now employed to continue running the business, selling the software called BossNet to our customers. I had the pleasure of seeing that software installed in our first hospital in America, something that would have been totally impossible for us as a startup company here in South Australia. And I had I shouldn't say displeasure, but I was in India 2 weeks ago and I saw what the Indian market looks like, which is really exciting, but I'm glad it's somebody else's money. I'm really proud to be working for AllScripts. One of the first things that I found when I joined AllScripts was there's a program called the AllScripts Developer Program, which is an industry engagement program that is specifically designed to support startups and established businesses to engage with our software. It grants companies free access to a library of tools and a paid model that gives you access to a deep capability within our products. As a business, we could have been selling our software in any of 6,000 hospitals around the world with almost no startup costs, and that was really exciting to me. AllScripts is a company that excels in interoperability, innovation, and I've been working very hard with the team here in Australia to try and drive that awareness. I'm also very proud to talk about AllScripts committing to building entirely new facilities here in Adelaide. It's great because I'm in Adelaide, but really exciting new facility where we should be cutting the slab, burying some data cables on Monday morning at 170 Frome Street, which is the Grant Thornton building. Some of you may know it, Frome and Flinders. So it's a visible commitment by AllScripts to the market. Not only is it a facility that will cope with our future growth requirements, but it is also a facility that will allow our industry partners to collaborate in a facility we're calling the Innovation Hub. We're building a virtual hospital called our Health Ecosystem, and both the Innovation Hub and Health Ecosystem will be available to our industry partners. And that is where I am drawn to now mention the relationship that we've developed with Anthony, GP Partners and GP Accelerate. Really excited to be working with GP Partners to make that facility available to members of the Accelerate program. And that is not altruistic, I'm sure you can assume. We're looking to demonstrate our capabilities in interoperability. We're also a company that's very interested in early access to new technology as it arrives, and we're looking to direct the conversation about where health IT should go here in Australia. So, today really is a great day to start in health IT, or tomorrow, I guess, or yesterday. If you have an idea or a solution that's more effective, more efficient, cheaper, or somehow novel to something that's being done in health today, there's a market. Companies, Google, Apple, Microsoft have created the technology platform that allows you to distribute that solution and a costing model that allows you to monetize that very easily. Facebook and Twitter have created the tool set that allows you to get your message to the market quickly. Unlike 15 years ago, the Australian IT market customer base is 100% engaged in IT to some degree. Unlike what we went through, you don't need to build a platform to sell your solution to customers. You can simply sell your solution to customers. AllScripts is unique compared to its competitors in our capability to offer access to our market to companies that are looking to enter the market, whether that's in Australia or anywhere else in the world. Now, the GP Accelerate program is something that I'm personally very excited about. I think it is, in the truest sense of the word, smart money. Not only is it creating the capital that exists to help startups get started, but also giving you access to the industry, mentorship, access to companies like AllScripts and the other industry partners that exist. And it is something that I believe is going to make a significant difference to companies today. I'm very proud, and AllScripts is very proud to be associated with Anthony and GP Accelerate, and we're very much looking forward to working with the first partners in the Accelerate program. Thank you.
Rowan. That's really appreciated in the terms of the story that you shared from your own experience, and certainly a great demonstration in terms of where you are now with AllScripts and your approach to partnering. So we look forward to that. So with that, I might hand over to Anthony Francis, our CEO, to take you through GP Accelerate. Thank you.
Thanks, Roseanne, and thanks everyone else. I'm hoping this might be relatively short and sweet, and try and give you enough guidance about what we're up to and how we're doing it. But firstly, what a great turnout! Thanks so much for everyone to come. It's not always easy on a weeknight to turn up, and welcome to everybody. Welcome especially to the partners that have been helping us along the way. You can see them on the board. AllScripts, obviously, you've heard, have been very good supporters of what we're up to and how they're going to support basically our investments as we make them. Hybrid, I want to mention specifically Rob Bacar over there, who's housing us as a business at the moment, but also getting onto the coalface of putting his company behind ours and helping, promising to help our startups and us in marketing and social media type stuff as well, which has been brilliant. RAA, CBEX, Mothers Innovations, which is an interesting one. They couldn't be here tonight, but they're a car parts manufacturing group that are interested in entering health. GP Partners is another GP Partners, which does exist in Brisbane. They've travelled all the way down and are proud supporters and also investors in this space. And Health